Brenden celebrating last night. That was a fun pop-up show. Late night. Gators win the national championship. SEC pride. We're all about SEC
Oh, the
Sidelines.
Gators won? I didn't know.
Yeah.
What
SEC
happened?
Sidelines Sports Network, man. We needed that national championship for the conference.
Natty, baby.
It's big. Rob Browne, Brenden Martin. We got Coach John Brady checking in just a minute. About half past the hour, we're going to have half of the Tuesday regular duo. Yancy Porter, Yell Hotline will check in. But Rodney, get this. Rodney texted me last night and said, hey, we've been invited to a practice. We cannot, it's at 8:30 Central. So, hey, you got to take advantage when those come along. Be great to hear his reports on what happened. But take a picture with your phone of the QR code. We're on X. We are on YouTube, Facebook, 7 channels at the same time. Watch us now, watch us later. But watch this channel. Brenden, you made a great point last night. More and more, the best content, the best stories, the most accurate information is coming on the ground level. This channel, who was Coach Brady, will bring him in. You were the one back in November that talked about not pay attention to the Gators. And hell, think about it. The media days, I think Auburn was picked 9th. Florida was 20th in the preseason. They weren't picked real high, but that's what coaching and team play is all about, isn't it? Welcome aboard. Good morning.
Well, that's what the portal can do too. I think it's hard to predict who's good and who's going to be good when you have the addition and subtraction of players on teams. So I think Florida was underrated from the beginning because they had a number of players back, but certainly the Gator team. After I watched them a couple of times on TV early, I thought they had a lot of intangibles that championship teams possess, and it showed up to me in their play and what I saw, and I was kind of high on them all year. My screw up was I had Duke beating Florida for the national championship, so my bracket collapsed down the stretch. But that semifinal game, Duke just melted. They gave it away, and I don't know. It looked to me like have they ever practiced against full court pressure, and what kind of package do they have to get the ball in bounds late game against full court pressure? Rob, everybody was running toward the ball in a small space. They had 4 guys running toward the ball, and there was nowhere to move, and it was an incredible. I believe if Mike Krzyzewski would have been on that bench, they'd have won that game. What do you think about that?
I do. And I also thought that was a really telling question and reaction from Kelvin Sampson early. Hey, the 2 teams combined are like 0 for 14 on the 3-point shots. He goes, hey, it's the national championship. This isn't Wednesday night in the middle of January. And I love that line. You're not playing the University of Sasquatch. And, everybody's going, who the hell is the University of Sasquatch? But the nerves, they calm down. But to me, I break it down like this. In my opinion, National Player of the Year for the whole year, Janai Broome. MVP of March Madness, Walter Clayton. And flag, you got to hit that 5-foot floater there at the end. But I got to give credit, man, to Florida for – Coach, you've had teams like this. I think Florida likes getting behind psychologically, and then they start playing. It's like when they got behind, it was I told Audrey, I said, it's over. The Gators will win because I picked them to beat Houston, and I got that one right. I don't do it always right, but that's a personality trait, and that's a good one.
Well, I don't know if it was. I don't know if Florida planned it. Hey guys, I don't know if Coach told them before the game. Hey guys, let's go get behind so we can play better and come back and win. I don't.
No, what, they don't have that. You don't have that in the playbook. It's more like go
before the national.
Go play possum, and then bring them in, guys. Yeah, we got them now. We got them down 10. We're good.
Yeah, we're down 10. Perfect.
But please accept what I mean. I just think they do. I know no coach would
say.
No,
I'm with you, Rob. Actually, I've subscribed to some of that before.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big believer in whoever, particularly at the college level, whoever wins the field goal stat usually wins the game. And if you lose the field goal stat, you have to make it up somewhere else. Either you get to the foul line more than the opponent, You get an incredible number of offensive rebounds. It translates into second chance points, or you turn them over and get easy live ball breaks off of turnovers in transition. Houston lost the field goal stat last night, not by much, 40 to about 35 or 36. But Florida did win the field goal stat, and Houston wasn't able to make it up. They lost the free throw line as well, which they fouled, I think, like 16 times the second half, and they only had 3 fouls the first half. So they put Florida on the line, and Florida's an excellent free throw shooting team. So they couldn't get it there. They got 13 offensive rebounds, but didn't convert them into a lot of second chance points. So they weren't able to make up the loss in the field goal stat for the game because they couldn't do the other things that overcome that. So, and I think if you follow the field goal stat throughout the course of the college game, really good teams that can lose the field goal stat and win the game are teams that I think are really, really good. And Houston's been able to do that several times this year. They don't shoot it well, but they shoot it pretty good from the 3-point line. Florida was able to run them off the line, and so therefore Florida was able to come back and win the game. And when Clayton didn't play well, Richard played well. He was 5 for 10, 4 for 7 from the 3, 4 for 4 from the free throw line, had 8 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 turnovers. I think he was the difference maker when Clayton struggled at times, which is a good game plan by Houston to keep Clayton off a rhythm of play, and that's what Houston did for the most part.
What was really neat to me was watching the way Houston's rebounding. They tip the ball out. It's a different. You don't see other teams doing that, and they're I don't think their biggest guy is 6'7" or 6'8". They're a different kind of team, and it's hard to play them. They are 19-1 in the Big 12, and they were ready.
Well, they're athletic. The other team that tips it out in the SEC, if you can recall, is Texas A&M and Buzz Williams.
Yeah,
they
right.
were a good rebounding team, offensive
Yeah.
rebounding team, and they relied on tipping the ball back out when they had the opportunity or didn't have the opportunity to get both hands on the rebound. So I think that was key as well for Houston's success throughout the years, their ability to offensive rebound the ball and create second opportunities for themselves.
When you look at both of these teams, when Walter Clayton went, I think, with the last 7 or 8 minutes before he hit his first 3-pointer, and you know this as a coach, you just got to let him work through it, and there's no panic. That cool hand Luke personality of Florida. That and look at their coach. I mean, I think what a cool stat was prior to this. Jimmy Valvano, 1983, at age 37, won the national championship. Todd Golden wins it at age 39. The two youngest guys to ever win it, at least since 1983, and they both beat Houston. That's pretty wild. Houston, I'm sure, does not like hearing that stat.
Well, Todd Golden's done a remarkable job with that team. And there's one thing to coach well, but there's a whole nother level to be able to coach well with good talent and be able to coach talent. And I think there's a difference right there. And I think Todd Golden certainly exemplified that. Had the best guard and one of the best guards in the country on his team. Had a talented front line that really complemented one another. And then he had some auxiliary players on the wings that were really good as well. Richard, we talked about him in the game he had last night. So, coaching well is one thing, but coaching talented players is another thing to get them to play together as well as Florida played all year long, as a really unselfish type of basketball team.
Coach, this year, 14 SEC teams make it to the tournament. It's the most ever. 30 wins over ranked teams. It's fantastic. And then you got the portal. I mean, immediately there starts to be movement all over the place. So I'm going to ask you, let's say Pettiford at Auburn. I'm going to test the waters in the NBA. If you're a coach, isn't it common to say, yeah, go do it? But if you don't get a really good grade, you are eligible to come back. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that rule's been in place for a number of years.
Yeah.
Guys being able to go test the waters and see where they rank, go work out, and then be able to come back. But plus, you add another caveat on there too. While they're out there testing the waters, they also may get an opportunity to go play somewhere else for more money on the collegiate level.
That was, I was going to say, the bad part.
That's another piece of the carrot
Yeah.
that added to the
Yeah.
complication of is he going to go to the NBA or not, and then also is he going to stay in the portal and go get a better deal somewhere else. So there's a lot of moving parts in today's college basketball world, particularly at the top level. The best 3 or 4 conferences in the country.
All right, so here's another question. Looking at Houston last night versus Florida, let's focus on Florida. And my God, you've been to the Final Four. You know talent. Was Florida, in your opinion, a team loaded with future NBA, even lottery picks? I know that term. You have to be very careful when you use it, but I just want your thoughts on that.
Well, outside of Clayton, I think he's got 3 or 4 other players that will eventually play in the league or have an opportunity to make an NBA team. I don't see any perennial All Stars or Hall of Famers. Clayton's going to be a really good player at the NBA level,
Yeah.
and Condon and Howe and Richard and some of these other guys, will have opportunities to get drafted, or certainly get agent tryouts where they can play and have the opportunity to make NBA teams. My Final Four team, we had Tyrus Thomas was the 4th pick in the draft, and we had Glenn Davis was the 1st pick in the 2nd round. But other than them, Garrett Temple took a strange way in the NBA and played in the NBA 15 years. So we had some good players on that team, but we didn't have any NBA All Stars, and so I think Florida's done a nice job of getting a collection of really good players, led by Clayton, obviously, throughout the year, but certainly putting a good group of players together that played extremely well as a collection. And I think that goes back to coaching.
Yeah, I mean, in the temperament of Todd Golden, he's easygoing, and Kelvin Sampson. At the end of the game, that play, kind of break it down, put it in layman's street language, but the Houston player had to feel just horrible.
Well, those last 2 offensive possessions for Houston were kind of random possessions to me. I think in that particular time of a game, when you're playing for the national championship and you have the last 2 possessions,
Yeah.
the ball and down 1 or 2 or whatever the case was, I think you need to be really specific in what you run and who you run it for. I think there should be a specific play called at that particular time, maybe something you've just put in, something that maybe they haven't seen, but do something different besides just have random play and hope a player makes a play to win the game.
Yeah.
I think if you run something specific and it doesn't work, you can always go to driving the ball or ball screen and pick and pop or whatever a lot of teams do at the end of a play. But I thought specifically those 2 last possessions, there should have been something run or called for a specific player to have the opportunity to get the ball in a situation where he could have an opportunity to score it.
Coach, how much of that is experience from coaching? I mean, at the end of the game, the management of that, of knowing what to do. It's one thing to go through it and run scenarios and practice and all that stuff, but it's a tough thing to draw it back and hit a straight ball when everyone's watching, right? So and everything changes and it's crunch time. Just talk about how coaching is affected there and how Todd Golden's pedigree you think may have affected him in that situation, because they weren't winning the entire game.
Yeah, well, I think with Kelvin Sampson at the end of the game, I thought it should have been something done specific. And you talk about how to execute in the last 30 seconds or 45 seconds of a game when the game is on the line. I equate it to football. How many times you think football runs 2-minute drills to try to advance the ball quickly up the field and get a field goal or happen to get a touchdown and win the game?
Yeah.
Those are special situations that you work on.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's hard to duplicate the distractions the game brings with fans in the stands, the officials, and all the emotion that's running through it. But certainly, if you haven't done it, you have no chance to do it when it's time to execute something like that. So special situations, put 30 seconds on the shot clock. We've got to get a basket. This is what we're going to run at this particular time, and just drill it. It doesn't take you 8 or 10 minutes of the practice, but do it 3 times a week, side out of bounds, special situations, underneath the goal, whatever the case may be that the coach can come up with to expose his team to that. So when they do have to execute it in the game, at least they have the confidence of knowing they've done it in the practice.
Coach, another one, Kelvin Sampson said he has those guys shoot 150 free throws every day. He says, do it when no one's watching for the moments when everybody's watching. So there's so much that goes into getting to this moment. Your takeaways, and then I want to ask you, I've got some people asking me about, Bucky McMillan, and we've had him on this show before, and I got to get him on. I know he's kind of busy right now. He's having to learn how to do all that and all these cheers, and but you know what? His bank account, he doesn't he's having a blast. I am a big fan of his because of Tucker Osborne and William Galloway, some people we've had on our show that I know that played for him at Mountain Brook. But man, Samford, you launched a great career from Samford. Bucky's going to A&M. I think it makes it easier for them to get another coach.
Well, certainly, I know it'd be a lot of people I think would want the Sanford job. I think it's an attractive job. It's in a great city, and
Yeah.
Martin Newton, the AD there, has done a
Yes.
wonderful job. The facilities are in place. When I was there, we were in Cybert Gym that would seat about 2,800,
Yeah.
and it had bleachers. It was a pull-out bleacher gym. It wasn't
Yeah.
what they have now, and
Yeah.
certainly the facilities are there. They're in place. The locker room, practice facility that one of my former players just gave the money and put his name on it in a new practice facility. So Joey Davenport, who you may know, Rob.
Wow, that's awesome.
So they just opened that up, and it's a state of the art type of building. So
Yeah.
whoever walks in there, they don't have to worry about facilities. They just need to worry about the old 3-letter word in college basketball today. They call it the NIL. You've got to
Well,
get some of that to be successful.
yeah, things are good on Lakeshore Drive,
Absolutely.
and you're close to the Tiny Kingdom, Mountain Brook, pretty cool place in Vestavia and Homewood. It is a really neat story too about. I don't know Buzz Williams, and I know you do. He's one of my favorite coaches for what he does. It's a story that we were told by, I think, Olin Buchanan, our friend from TexAgs.com. He does a camp for special needs kids. He does a lot of things that no one talks about that he doesn't have to do. He's going to Maryland, though. That's why Bucky's obviously going to Texas A&M. What do you think Buzz will do up there at Maryland? Because, basketball is a pretty big deal at Cole Fieldhouse. And I just think this basketball season, Buddy and Brenden let me come on last night. I was on there on the pop-up show, and I was talking about it's going to be hard to just park basketball over on the side of the road now, like it typically has been after the national championship game on Monday night because of what the SEC did. I keep threatening to use the F word, football, and we'll talk about that. But what do you think Buzz will do at Maryland? And then let's go around the SEC because Yancy Porter will be on in a minute, and we're going to talk about Chris Beard and what he's doing.
Well, Lefty Drizel to Gary Williams. I mean,
Yeah.
that's some basketball. Two Hall of Fame basketball guys right there that can really coach it. And now they're going to bring Buzz in there. Buzz he looks at this thing a little bit different than some coaches. I think. I don't think he's ever been anywhere more than 6 or 7 years, and I think he's bought into this. If you stay too long in a place that's not one of the blue bloods of college basketball, you can't sustain it. So he gets it to a point where he thinks that now they forget where they were when he took it over, and now he's raised the expectations while he was there.
Yeah.
And can he meet those expectations? It may just continue. It may can't continue to go that high that quick, so it may go down. So he gets another job. You look at his track record. But will he win at Maryland? Yes, because why wouldn't he? You look at where he's been: Marquette, Virginia Tech, Texas A&M. He's won everywhere he's been. So he'll do the same at Maryland. And I think with the age he is right now, he stays there 5 or 6 years as he's done in the past. Then I think he may just back out of this thing and not coaching anymore. I don't see him as a lifer coaching when he's 70. But I do see him at a point in his life when he thinks I've done enough. He survived it, made a lot of money, so I'm gonna go out on my own terms.
Yeah, and his style of play, it's not the roster's not loaded with 5 stars. Of course, Look at Florida. I mean, Walter Clayton was a 4-star out of Lake Wales in football. He goes to Iona and almost transfers to St. John's with Rick Pitino, co-national coach of the year with Bruce Pearl, but he didn't. And I don't even know if he was evaluated in by the basketball recruiting gurus, but there's just a lot of cool stories. Back to
Well, you know what I think about star rating. I mean, I
yes,
don't
exactly. Yeah.
I don't get into all those star
Yeah.
rating people because who rates them? I don't know who rates them or where
Yeah.
it comes from. So
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of he's a 4-star, he's a
Yeah.
5-star.
All
Well,
you got to do is look at him. Yeah.
I was thinking about that, Coach. Last I knew you were going to be on, and I was really wondering your opinion on. I almost wrote an article for GatorBait yesterday, randomly, because I just got this feeling when I was looking at some of the promos of the game coming up that we were going to go watch a football game. Like we got, you show the bigs for Houston, the bigs for Florida. I mean, these dudes could strap it on tomorrow. I got a tight end. I got all stars, just like Walter Clayton Jr. I felt like last night was gonna. I'm getting away from rock fight because we've used it too much. I felt like it was, a football game. It was old school, smash mouth, line them up. You know what I'm going to run. I know what you're going to run. My guy's better than your guy. And we're going to fight it out like a couple of Irish boxers in the street until somebody does not get up. And I felt like that's what we got last night between two teams. Is this the future of what we're going to see for college basketball? And in a sense of, I felt like Florida's biggest asset wasn't that they played possum in the first half, is that they wore you out. They weathered your storm. They sat there and they didn't get freaked out. Todd Golden kept you together. Every single game they went into halftime, with 6-point deficit. And they come back and they just keep going. I told my friend at 6 minutes left in the game, watch, Walter Clayton Jr. at some point is going to insert himself into this game and they will win. So is this sort of like what sort of exciting, I guess, sort of games that we should see in the future? Is this a winning formula to have just endless bench, big guys that are going to come in and give you 25 fouls a game and away we go?
Well, if you look at both teams only played 8 guys last night. It's not like they went 10 deep in the bench or 11 deep in the bench. They only played a significant number of 8 guys. But what I think what it does say about college basketball, everybody likes to shoot the three. Everybody likes to run up and down the floor. Alabama was a prime example of that. But Rob, as we've talked about on this show a bunch of times, I think defending and rebounding still has a major part of a championship winning team because it's all rebounding and defending is all about effort. And you can control the effort you give.
Yeah.
That's a mental thing. But you can't control that ball going in that goal. You can get quality shots and still miss it. But can you rebound and put it back in? Can you get to the foul line? But the effort was displayed last night front and center by both of those teams and how well coached they were. And I think anytime you get two teams that are well coached and they try to take the other's strength out of the game and make them beat you somewhere else, I think that's what was demonstrated last night. And certainly, I don't know if it's a trend, but you'll have a team like Duke. Duke should have been there from an offensive standpoint. They're as good as anybody in the country, probably the second or third best offensive team in the country. But they weren't able to get there because of the defense that Houston applied the last 3 or 4 minutes. So, but I do think defending and rebounding is something that's been overlooked in the last 2 or 3 years because the emergence of 3-point shooting and going up and down the floor and shooting it quit. I think that's overcome the fundamentals of what makes a good basketball team. And I'm telling you, guarding well, rebounding the ball, I think still plays a major role in winning a championship.
Well, and the culture of the SEC, I mean, I'm always a huge football guy, right? Obviously, but it's like, but the culture of the SEC in football has always been go play great defense, right? Go be great up front, be strong, fundamentals in the SEC and in football. It feels like that's bleeding over because I felt like we watched some really great basketball of just follow your shot, of go get your rebound, of team, not being selfish. I just thought we saw great team basketball. Great old school basketball. Like you said, it wasn't Alabama chucking up 45 3-pointers, and hoping to get hot. And I'm making fun of them because, they didn't win the national championship, but I digress. But the whole point is that I just, I felt like that's sort of like indicative of football. And now we've got some SEC basketball that's got its own brands to some degree.
Its own personality.
Yeah,
I agree with that. It really does, Coach. And along the line of what he's saying, my point about Walter Clayton was people are not very good at evaluating heart. That's what they don't get. And that's a guy that you go in the locker room, if he doesn't think you're giving effort, he's going to let you know. And you have to let people like that do it. But he finds excuses to win, and he kept his cool. And if Florida hadn't played, Coach, that defense there at the end, that swarm, Houston gets an open look, and it may have turned out differently. You got to applaud that. I like to say in football, if you expect the team to play the full 60, you got to stay in the stands the full 60, okay? You can go out and bullshit with your friends after the game. Basketball, that full 40. Remember Nolan Richardson's 40 minutes of hell? I mean, I love to see effort, and you see guys diving for balls, and that damn up. But here's the cool thing about Florida. You're going to remember where these guys are from. Alex Condon, Perth, Australia. Elijah Martin, Summit, Mississippi. You think about Walter Clayton Jr., Lake Wales, Florida. Will Richard, Fairburn, Georgia. That's right next to Atlanta. Of course, everything's right next to Atlanta, but this is a team that will go down in history and be remembered for everything, winning the national championship. But for people who are going to remember even where they're from. That's how close fans got to this team.
Well,
it's a throwback.
And I think the comparison will be made, is this team that Florida just had better than Billy Donovan's back-to-back in 06, 07 or whatever it was? Or is this team better than the Florida teams that won it back-to-back with basically the same players? Billy had everybody come back.
Yeah.
Because in 06, we went to the Final Four with Florida. The last time SEC had two teams in the Final Four was 06. It was us in Florida. And Florida went on to win the national championship, and they came back and they won it again. I would be a good debate, and I would love to ask Billy Donovan what he thought about that team as compared to this Florida team. Which one is better? And that's just something that doesn't mean anything, but it's certainly something to think about. Is this the best Florida team ever, or was two Billy teams better than this team that just won it last night?
I don't know. Those teams were good.
Yeah, they were good.
Did you see Al Horford in the stands?
Is he still playing in the NBA?
Oh, I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't believe so. But
somebody made the comment, though, he looks like he still could be. He looked really young. I was like, well, I don't think he's still playing.
It just
Horford may still be. Is he still with the Celtics? I don't know.
I'll look it up.
Yeah,
I'll look it up. But
somebody will comment.
But it was Gator Pride in there last night. I think there's a photo that Chris Spears. By the way, the pictures you're watching or saw earlier from photographer Chris Spears, GatorbaitMedia.com. He's a fantastic photographer for us. Danny Werfel in the stands last night. So you always see the former Gator greats come out. You know how that is at LSU, Coach. I mean, how important is that?
Well, I think anytime you can rely on former players to come back or that did something significant and be around the present players, I think that builds tradition. And I like tradition, and I like taking care of tradition. And this is what is expected. And it's something to base your future on, too, about what you've done in the past. And I think anytime you can connect those two together, it makes for a strong overall basketball program.
Well, and there it is. North Florida, Al is still playing. Yes. So he was right. I mean, he's been there he's been there a while. That's good for him. I mean, think about that. LeBron's been playing for 30 years. So Al Horford's getting the George Blando Award himself. There's Danny Werfel in the stands. Coach, here it is. We can't pull ourselves away from it. Did you ever think that SEC basketball would be this big? I mean, you can't get enough of this stuff. And it is, I don't know what I can put my finger on, but Brenden tapped on it. It's the way we play defense in this league. Get after it. And it transfers. I think that's pulling a lot of the football only fans more toward basketball. I think I may have hit something there because they like physical Elijah Martin. Look at that guy.
Yeah, well, the look of the Florida team, and certainly that's why I think a good strength program is crucial.
Yeah.
To having a good basketball program. I think you can get mentally tougher in the weight room with the right guy instructing your players. And my philosophy on that was I used to tell our teams, whatever when you go in the strength coach's domain, he makes all decisions. He disciplines you. You go by his rules. Now, when you're over here on the basketball floor, that's my thing. But I never wanted to cross over or interfere with the strength coach at LSU. That was his domain. That's what he was hired to do. And he handled those players like he wanted to handle them in terms of discipline, if they were late, whatever the case may be. So he was able to have full reign over my players when it was time to go in that weight room. And I think that's a good way to do it. That way they don't come running to the coach and you have crosshairs of who's in charge of the weight room. I don't know nothing about weights. I used to give that to the strength coach, but I think that's a big part of it and the toughness of it. But, also the SEC is going to continue to be good because of the money that they have to back these programs now. LSU has just signed 6 or 7 players out of the portal. They feel really good with. They increased Matt McMahon's NIL by $2 million for next year. So,
Wow.
So we'll see. We'll see if then that's where the evaluation comes in. Are you evaluating the right players that fit what you want to do, and it translates into wins?
Yeah.
And certainly, if they just gave Matt McMahon $2 million more to get an NIL to get some players in, what happens if it doesn't happen? Then they say, well, heck, we're going to do something else. But certainly, I think what LSU's done right now in terms of the portal has been quite good, and we'll see how that translates into winning next year.
Yeah, let's say something real quick before we bring Yancy Porter in from the Rebel Yell Hotline. That Winter Timber right now, they are growing in the footprint that is the SEC, located in Athens, Alabama. They're building a store in Auburn. Look for them in the SEC towns. That's what they're looking to do. They're open every day of the week. Turkey season right now. It's never too early to start getting your stuff ready for next year and deer hunting, duck season. They've got deer stands. They've got all the food, everything you need. Right now, let's focus on turkey hunting. You need the copper-plated loads. Migra Ammunition. Love these people. One shot, one kill. The copper-plated loads, 3.5. You can get them. The slate calls, the box calls, the diaphragm, the mouth calls, the gear, the camo, the boots, the snake boots. You got to have all that because you're going to spend a lot of time when you're turkey hunting. You might be leaning up against the tree or sitting up against the tree, and Mr. No Shoulders is going to come over your legs. You better have some good snake boots. Get it all at Winter Timber Outdoors in Athens, Alabama, open every day of the week. Coach, Mr. No Shoulders, I have been leaning up against the tree and had a 5-foot rat snake. It wasn't a cottonmouth, but crawled right over me. Now, most people would have been nervous. I just almost, I was like, okay, he's not poisonous. Just keep going. But hey, right now, let's bring in Yancy Porter. And Yancy, we got Coach John Brady on here right now. Somebody in social media put out a meme of Leonardo DiCaprio or whatever his name is from the Wall Street movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, when he was going to resign and leave. And he goes, I'm not leaving. And it had Chris Beard about staying at Ole Miss. Did you see that, Yancy, or Coach, or anybody? That was brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, again, I don't think I think it was more of a concern with
Yancy. Oh no. I feel like we're in the old days of the
yes,
Soviet Union. The Minders got him.
You must got a phone call.
Yeah.
Are
Go
y'all
ahead.
not able to hear?
Yeah, we got you now. We lost you there for a second, but come back. Go ahead, Breaker 19. Come on in, Yancy.
Yes, I think the year before with Arkansas was a little bit bigger worry than this year, but A&M did give him a chance to go back home. His mom lives in Houston, his daughters live in Texas. So there were some antsy moments, I guess, so to speak, but I don't think it got to the point of where some of the media put it.
Yeah,
Mm,
and it was brought up, Coach. Chris Beard.
yeah.
Yancey was ahead of anybody on this show. He goes, look, don't be surprised. Chris Beard's not the next basketball coach at Ole Miss. And Coach, when I was in Atlanta watching Ole Miss play Michigan State, they looked like they belong and they were very comfortable in that setting.
Well, Chris Beard's an outstanding coach and a good guy to be around, and I got to know him when he was at Little Rock. They lost one game in the Sun Belt that year, and we were able to beat them in Jonesboro. And I remember this: the last regular season game we played Little Rock in Little Rock, and Chris Beard was coaching there then. And I may have told you this. His manager at Little Rock brought in a Nike box taped up and said, Coach Brady, Coach Beard wanted me to give you this. It's the last game I was going to coach. I was going back to New Orleans, and and we had the conference tournament, but this was my last regular season game. So I thought to myself when the little kid left, I'm in the locker room, team's out there warming up, like I need another pair of shoes. So I opened the box, and it was a fifth of Belvedere vodka. Chris Beard had called my assistant coaches to see what kind of vodka I liked, and it was Belvedere. So after the game, they
That's
beat us.
awesome.
They won that game. So after the game, I took that fifth of Belvedere vodka, walked into the press conference, and put it on the podium. And I said, this was a gift of mine from your basketball coach here, Chris Beard. Let me tell you about this guy. He's going places because he gets it. He gets
Yeah.
it. Yeah, and so that was how my relationship with Chris started. And he's a good guy. He's good friends with Kermit Davis. He's good friends
Yeah.
with Tim Floyd, two of my dear friends. And
Yeah.
he's an outstanding coach, and Ole Miss is fortunate to have him, and did a great job to keep him.
Well, Yancey,
Coach
talk
Brady,
about it. Yeah.
Coach Brady, are you living down there in Destin by Kermit as well?
Well, I'm in Fort Myers. I do have a little place in Destin, but we all get together and play golf during the course of the summer. In fact, I'm going to see Kermit in a couple of weekends. We're going to spend 3 days together and play some golf.
You tell him I said hello. I said it's like old Coach's Road down there in Destin. I know there's
Yeah, it
several
is.
people. Yeah, yeah. I know it's a good time. Y'all all getting together. He thinks
There's
highly of
nothing
you.
more fun than playing golf with former coaches. So, like, I've done it. I had experience a couple times, and I've caddied more for coaches. Like Rick Neuheisel used to be my guy, but there's nothing more fun. Yeah, seeing Rick Neuheisel and Steve Spurrier play head to head. That was intense. That was the
I
most
love
intense
that.
match I've ever seen in my life. I truly, not to digress, but they go into 9. It's about the storm at Castle Pines Golf Club in Colorado, and Spurrier is got one. He's got one tennis shoe on because he's got a bum ankle, and one golf shoe on. And Neuheisel and him are not messing around, and they are going in. Rick is up 1 going into 9, and Coach Birdie's wins 9 and says, Ricky says, well, the rain's coming. Think we should go? Coach says, no, I'll see you at 10. They played right through into the end. And I will not reveal who won because as a caddy, you never do that. But at the end of the day, it was one of the most intense, fun things to watch these two guys battle out because it's all about competition. It's all about being competitive, right, Coach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it
Well,
reminds you of
Yeah,
Caddyshack
well,
when that priest was playing. It's the best game of my life.
yeah. Kermit
well,
Kermit was a gym rat. I played with him on the golf course a few times. He's definitely he's not a Steve Spurrier out there, that's for sure.
no, he's
He's
not.
just
He's
having
not.
fun.
No, the
I don't
golf
know
the
about
golf
Coach
game's one
Brady.
thing. The golf game's one thing, but the BS is a whole nother level. I'll
Yeah.
tell
That's
you
right. That's
It's the
right.
best,
That's
though.
right.
It's the best.
Well, it is. And this is, I mean, Yancey, look at this. Here it is, April 8th. And we're not even using the F word, football. Basketball this season And Coach, you got to be loving this as a coach because you're an elite company. You've made it to a Final Four, but and Yancy and what Brenden just said, God, this basketball season is like no other. I mean, 14 teams made it. Yancy, let's talk about the atmosphere in Ole Miss right now. How fired up are people about the portal and Chris Beard and that staff? What can happen at Ole Miss? Because when you play and are as well coached and as hungry and as competitive as Ole Miss is, you got a chance against anybody.
Yeah,
Oh,
right now, you're right. I'm in Ole Miss lose players, so it's this it's going to be a busy next. What I think it goes to the maybe the 22nd is the last day that you can get into the portal. Obviously, you can continue signing them as long as the players get in the portal before the 22nd. So they'll be signing them probably well into May, but they've got 10 more guys they're probably going to sign. I think now you can carry up to 15 on your roster when they expanded it. The scholarships and baseball, they expanded theirs to 35 from 11.7. So there's a lot of that. They feel good about what they're doing down low right now. They got Corey Chest, out of LSU's a rebounding machine, and Malik Diaz said he's going to come back. Tyler Jordan, the number 4 power forward in the country in high school, signed, and he'll be reporting here in a few weeks. So they got 3 guys, 6'9", 220 to 240, that are, they feel really good about for next year. They got Patton, um, uh, shooting guard, a 6'6" shooting guard. They're trying to get longer there at guard. This year they went. They generously listed their guards at 6'1" and 5'9", and they were about 6 foot and 5'8". So they're trying to get longer there at the guard. And I think that's a main goal of theirs. But they got to get players everywhere, right?
yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting next month for excuse me, for Coach Beard, and we'll see where it goes. But I have no doubt that he's going to fill out the roster with guys that he wants and needs and that are role players. If you look at his history,
Yeah, at Texas Tech. Yeah. Well, Coach Yancy, we got you back here. Are you there? Yeah.
I'm
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about the roster, and we lost you there for a second. And keep talking about the roster when you come back. Just keep talking about the roster. Yeah.
Yeah, the point being is that they've got to field 10 or 11 guys. They're trying to get longer at guard. They feel really good about what they've done down low in the
Yeah.
post players, and he's got the package that he needs. NIL now. They've made it as competitive as all the elite teams in the country to keep him here at Ole Miss. But if you look back at his past teams, from his Texas Tech teams, to Little Rock to Texas, he won with guys without NBA players, so to speak. He's always won them with blue collar. Now, there's been some good players, but they don't normally. It's not the high flying, top 5 lottery pick type NBA players. He wins it with guys that are great college players that
Yeah.
love to play defense, and I expect him to kind of do the same, fill out the roster in the same way this year with Ole Miss.
Coach, along the line of what he just said, he wins with a lot of blue collar type players. Maybe not the superstars that everybody's talking about, but aren't those guys often easier to coach?
Uh, I, I I I guess so. A couple of those players on the Ole Miss team were holdovers from Kermit. I mean, they'd been there
Yeah.
4 years, 5 years, or whatever the case may be, and that really contributed in a big way to the Ole Miss program, and that gave him some leadership and some. I hate the word culture, but everybody uses that word like it's easy. So, but I think those players that returned that played for Kermit really helped with all of that to allow this team to be what it became. Plus, they had the little guard from Virginia Tech or West Virginia, whatever it was, I think was the key to them too in
Padilla,
making big
yeah.
baskets down the stretch. So I don't know. I think regardless of whether the player is somewhat talented or very, very talented, it depends on his competitive nature and what makes him go. Uh, two of my better players I ever coached, Stromile Swift and Brandon Bass, were my two least uh, problematic guys,
Yeah.
and their competitive nature was really good. I mean, they came to practice every day. They wanted to be good, and
Yeah.
anytime you can establish that with your best players, or they're your most low maintenance players, you've got a chance to do some really special.
Well, the thing is about it, and Yancey, I like what Coach just said about Stromile Swift, and I remember when he came to the Grizzlies, how big a deal that was. Yancey, the Chris Beard and his staff, he's got a really good staff. They coach those kids really hard, and Coach Brady, you did. Uh, the kind of coaches that just I personally have always gravitated toward are those kind of coaches. Mix in some talent, and then you bring in some guys maybe that weren't as highly recruited. That's the ultimate chemistry. You mentioned the guards. Padilla was a transfer from Virginia Tech, but was it Holiday, the 5'8" or 5'9" guy who was from like Queens or the Bronx? Is that where he's
Juju
from?
Murray. Juju
Juju
Murray. Yeah,
Murray.
he was from the Bronx. That's
Yeah.
right.
Hey, any 8 days a week, I'll go find kids that grow up playing the ball in New York, Philly, Boston. There's the East Coast guards. Of course, you got them in Memphis and Baton Rouge too. But I think the collection, that Ole Miss team was fun to watch, and it was fun watching them in the tournament. And finishing off the takeaway when they lost to Michigan State, it wasn't, hey boy, they really played a Tom Izzo team close. It was, damn, we lost. They were mad about it. And I've said this forever. SEC basketball will get better when fan bases get as mad and angry as they do after a football loss. They get that mad after a basketball loss. I think we're getting to that point, guys. Y'all agree or disagree?
I agree.
Ye-
But in my opinion, I think SEC uh, fan base in basketball has always been like that.
Yeah.
I can go back when I was there. Look, the fans, they don't have any patience with anything. I mean, it's like what we talked about with Buzz Williams. Once you establish winning, they forget where you came from to get it to that point. They
Yeah.
want the next year to be better than it was the year before. And I think that's why he changes jobs every 6 or 7 years, because he gets to a point where it's just going to be downhill. There's no way you can sustain that
Yeah.
unless you're at a blue blood school. And and
Yeah.
and he hadn't been at blue blood schools. He's kind of made it work. So,
Yeah.
but I think the fan base in basketball has always been good. I think this year with 14 teams, it just made the nation more aware of the quality of basketball that's played in the SEC.
Yeah.
I think the depth of the league this year is better than it's ever been. I'm not sure the team that won it in Florida is the best SEC team ever that ever
No.
has played it. So I think there's
No.
some other teams that may be better than this Florida team, but certainly from a nationwide approach, 14 teams, seven in the Sweet 16. I mean, that's an incredible number, and I don't know if that'll
Incredible.
ever be done again.
Yeah. And
Well,
Yancey, yeah.
and I've mentioned this before, Coach. When revenue sharing coming into play, I think yesterday was the first day of the trial to settle. I think it was a $1.2 billion case, and that's really going to cover from the past players. And then you're going to have revenue sharing up to $20.8 million a year. The interesting part is that 75% of it in most of the Power Five or four conferences
Yeah.
they're called now is going to go to football, right?
Hmm.
But when you look at teams like at the Big East and these basketball traditional schools, they're going to be putting their money towards basketball. A
Yeah.
lot of these schools like UConn and you can go back to Wichita State and Creighton and some of these smaller schools like that, all their money's going to go to basketball. So they're going to have a bigger piece of the pie unless the NIL makes up for it. But the NIL,
Yeah.
I would imagine that model is still going to be shifted heavily towards basketball as football as well. So the SEC had an advantage these last couple of years because even the NIL, with the majority going to football, their NIL packages were so much higher than the rest of the conferences. So we're going to see a shift, I would imagine, over these next 2 or 3 years, of these Big East schools and schools that really are big time into basketball. They're going to be getting obviously more money for their roster than the SEC schools and the majority of the Big 12 and the Big 10, where you really saw things shift these last couple years for basketball. So the SEC needs to really take advantage. Probably has about one more year of having a leg up on the competition. And then I would imagine that depth that we saw these last couple of years and probably next year as well will kind of start to fade once that pie gets so big for these other schools compared to the SEC schools.
Yeah, I want to address that, but I want to say something about Landers Ford people. Kent Ritchie, Don Kitchens, Brad Bellamy, the general manager. They're open every day of the week except Sunday, 7 a.m., 7 p.m., where Collierville meets Memphis, Poplar and Houston Levy. Huge inventory on that lot. There's three things I want you to talk about right now. Look at these, the Ford promise, the opportunities to save big. Brad Bellamy, the GM, talked on Friday's show about employee pricing for customers. Okay, we know about the tariffs. You can think what you want about them, but they're going to work with you at Landers. Great opportunities to buy cars, trucks, and SUVs. Check out those Broncos. I love the Sasquatch package, okay? It's a big off-road package with the big tires, four-wheel drive. I've driven in that. It's like it's not like it used to be. It is so comfortable, and you get off-road, you don't get scared. You're not going to get stuck. F-150s. The new 2025 Ford Expeditions are going to be there any day on the lot. Service department will pick you up, take round-trip transportation, and they give $500 off to anybody that comes in there, says I heard about it on SEC Sidelines. And remember, no matter where you live, they'll deliver anywhere. And I'm going down Friday night. I'm excited to the Landers Center in South Haven, Mississippi, to hear my man. I'm looking forward to hearing him, Sturgill Simpson. I think this guy and Chris Stapleton are legit country. I'm so fired up about going to it. And Charles Hall and his wife and some folks from Hewlett and Dunn are going to go with us, boot and clothing company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. So going to be a lot of fun. Coach, what Yancy just said, and one of our regular guests, I'm not thinking right now, said a high-ranking official in the SEC office in Birmingham said that's what the SEC is really paying attention to is percentage-wise. Yancy, a brilliant dissertation you just gave. 75% goes to football in the SEC. Flip that around for a lot of these schools where basketball is king. Holy cow. Talk about having some money to go spend. And the what's going on too is that 21.5 million, you're going to have to come up with it somewhere. Okay. So are some collectives likely going to fold up their tent? Yes. But in the SEC, the only difference is anything over $600, there's got to be full transparency. It's getting a lot like the bond market, people. Look at PIC, look at the Bloomberg. You know where things are priced.
Okay,
it's going to happen.
But Rob, here's the deal. The NCAA was trying to put a law down saying that you can't have NIL deals that are out of whack. You can't go cut a commercial. You can't go sign autographs at your local clothing store and get paid $10 million for it, right? Just that's not worth that. That's not a true NIL. But the courts shot that down and said you can't limit that. So the NILs are not going anywhere.
No.
Now, some of the colleges, they want to eat the NIL up because they want control of everything. which
Yes.
I don't think is good. I think the
Yeah.
NILs need to work separately, because what happens with that, you get the college to take over the NIL. Instead of having 2 or 3 employees, they're going to have 25. They're going to want to build a new building for all their
Yep.
offices. And next thing
Yep.
you know, 50% of the revenue that's coming in is going to come for administration costs instead of going to the players, right? So
Yeah.
you don't want the colleges taking over the NIL. But trust me, I don't know a college that doesn't want to take over all the NILs. But as far as limiting the money they can make in NIL and making it a fair deal of what the NCAA deems for that, for whatever, like I said, you go shoot a commercial or you go sign autographs at a clothing store, they can't limit it to what they believe is the fair market value for that. The court's already said no to that. So
Yeah.
the NILs will still be very, very active.
And coach, it goes back to what Patrick Henry and our founders of this country: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's what the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 against. And I wasn't advocating one way or the other, but I'm going
No,
to
I
advocate.
get that. I get
Yeah.
that. But a lot of people think that now
Yeah.
there's going to be fair market value for these NIL packages, and the NCAA push for that. But
Yeah.
I do. They're going to have to register with the school their NIL deals, so that will be on record. Whereas now nobody really knows anything, right? So
Yeah.
that is going to happen. But the NCAA is going to have zero control over how much money they can get on those NIL deals.
Yeah. And coach, what I was going to say too is, my attorney, Jack Turner, always says the only thing the NCAA has to be concerned with, because there's no subpoena power. So civil courts, it's antitrust laws. That's where all this stuff goes. I listened to Jack a lot, a Millsaps grad, Alabama Law School grad, smart guy in Memphis. But it's interesting that the NIL collectives, what Walker Jones has done at Ole Miss, and I don't know who's running it at LSU. I'm sure you do, but they do need to be independent, because if the universities gobble them up, they'll have 50 employees, and they'll spend, well, we're going to need to spend $75 million on a new office building so we can have a bunch of people share a seat with their ass. I like the way they run now: 2 or 3 people, a lean, mean operation, 5-10 minute board meetings at a table with no chairs. Move on. Let's go get better talent. Do you like that approach better? I mean, because I would love to have you. If I was an athletic director, I would pay you, Coach Brady, a handsome fee, money, cash preferably, but to be a consultant or whatever, to advise me. I don't know if you want to coach anymore, but I would want you advising me on how to do that. And so you got the mic.
Well, my opinion on it, I guess the athletic director decides how they're going to split up the 21 million or whatever the number is, and then outside of that, uh, LSU just hired one of my former players, Ronald Dupree, to be what they call a general manager of the LSU basketball program, and his job is to negotiate those type of deals with our players based on the market value of what they can draw. So um, that you have to be somewhat of an attorney now as a head basketball coach to figure all this stuff out,
Yeah,
or have someone there by you that understands the legalities of what you can and cannot do. So there's a ton of moving parts in being a high major college basketball coach today. That's why I don't have any problems about the money that they're paying these guys, because they want you to win right now. And the difficulty is like Chris Beard at Ole Miss now. He's losing 11 guys. He's got to replenish a whole roster. So he's established an expectation level of what they can do, but it can vary from year to year depending on if you
yeah,
hit the portal right or not. That's why I think the most important part of any college basketball program is NIL revenue that you do have, uh, and also how they can add to that by getting an NIL deal outside of what they're allowed to give them, and then evaluate. If you don't evaluate the portal properly and you can't gauge what you need and bring the right type of players in, it can change quickly from one year to the other.
yeah,
Missouri's 0-18, and they have a good basketball team this year. Ole Miss goes as far as they go this year. If they don't evaluate right, they could slip. And so it's an added dimension in college basketball today. So it's about win now and we'll worry about next year when it comes. There's no building a program, sustaining a program. It's every year you're like a junior college coach trying just to restock and win again.
Yeah.
And that's
And
Coach Brady.
great point.
That's why it's so important
Brilliant.
to have head coaches that are experienced. But you look at Lane Kiffin, right? He comes in, he had already coached in the NFL and had a salary cap and kind of already had a gauge of what to spend on each position to win
Yeah.
football games, right? Then you have Chris Beard who comes in. He before the NIL even started and the transfer portal even started at Texas Tech, he had 8 transfers over there on that
Yeah.
champion on the Final Four team with grad students. Remember, you used to get grad students that could transfer immediately. So
Yep.
he's been involved in this now for I don't know how long. 7, 8 years of heavy into the portal. So you better get the right coach that really understands the dynamics of the portal, evaluating the players in the portal and how much to spend. For a perfect example, Dre Davis at Ole Miss this year was a key piece of the puzzle. His brother Tay Davis came from Notre Dame. Everybody assumed he was coming to Ole Miss, and instead of being 6'4" like Dre, he was 6'9". It was a shoe in. He was coming to Ole Miss, but Coach Beard didn't evaluate his NIL worth the same as Oklahoma did, and so he went to
Yeah.
Oklahoma yesterday. So even in circumstances like that, where you've got the brother and a really, really good player, he's going to do great at Oklahoma. But you got to understand what your budget is and how much value you put at each position and also the bench,
Yeah.
right? So you got to understand, you better have a coach in place that understands the dynamics, unless you come from a program that is still getting the majority of their players from the high school ranks and developing them and able to sign, top 10 players every year and just sprinkle in a couple portal players. But that's not the way Beard's ever going to run
Yeah.
anywhere that
Coach,
he's at.
and one thing, LSU's fortunes for NIL can certainly be helped when you hear drill here, drill now. I don't think people have any clue, unless they've lived in Louisiana or spent time down there, how much the oil and natural gas industry means financially to that state. Because the Pennington, family down there, what they gave for the chemical engineering and all, LSU's got a fan base like Ole Miss, and that's all, across the SEC. They're all super passionate. Now, basketball is starting to get that money, and if you're the rest of the country, you have to start going, wow. It just means more. If they start carrying in the Southeastern Conference as much about basketball as they do football and baseball. I mean, my God, LSU has 35 or 40 media members at a baseball press conference. At a baseball press conference. I mean,
Yeah.
who are the top 3 attendance leaders in the country for baseball, college? LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I mean, it's
Arkansas,
Arkansas. I'm just saying,
top
Arkansas
four,
now.
top four
that's your
every
top
year.
4 right there. And living in Memphis, you know what the dream is? One day, when you retire, you can do it before you retire, but you're sitting out on that front porch with your legs kicked up, drinking a pitcher of Long Island teas, listening to the Cardinals game on the radio or watching the Braves, which down here people do both. But man, baseball in Baton Rouge and in Oxford, it's so big. But getting back to this basketball coach, I like what he just said. Porter Moser, 4th year at Oklahoma. Heck, he's had a team to the Final Four. He took Loyola and Sister Janine, who by all estimates is pushing 107 now. And as far as I know, she's still living. 107. She and Mildred from Birmingham ought to get together for lunch. But, Coach, when we talk about the NIL, we'll wrap it up here in a minute. What Florida did, they built a culture, and now it changes. Y'all are both brilliant at pointing this out. Beard's losing 11 guys. Then you talk about Mike McMahon at LSU. LSU's been to 3 Final Fours. You went to 1. Dale Brown went to 2. There's tradition there. And when you're at a program where you can talk about Final Fours at LSU or Florida, and now even Auburn, say which one, that's pretty cool. You're the color analyst. You see every play of every game. Matt McMahon, he did not forget how to coach. He got left kind of a tough situation. Compare the roster development to where it was 3 years ago. There's a way out, isn't there?
Yeah, well, yeah, and it can change quickly one way or the other. And
Yeah.
that's why I go back to repeating myself. It's all in. And you see, the players we brought in a year ago to LSU, we went backwards because I don't think they were evaluated properly, and they wound up not being good enough to win in an SEC that's probably the deepest it's ever been.
Yeah.
With 14 teams in the NCAA tournament. So it goes back to if they're going to give the coach the money to that they think is comparable to improving the team. I think it's very important LSU goes from next to last in the league to get to that 7 or 8 mark to show improvement with the money they're investing now.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's unreasonable. The money you invest, you want to return on your money, and that comes from the administration saying, "Hey, look, if we're giving you 5, 6, 7 comparable NIL money like everybody else at that level, we expect
Yeah.
you to be at that point."
Yeah.
So. We'll see how it goes, but I think the evaluation of the portal to be able to bring the players in that you think can win and have a competitive nature that can get you in the top 3 or 4, I think that's critical.
Yeah, it really is. We'll wrap up here now, and I got to say, Coach, we'll be bringing you back on again in the next few weeks because I can't get enough of this stuff, and it just you have been invaluable. What you've lent to this show and brought to this show, and people love having you on, and we love you, man. You were flying last night. You get up in the morning early when you've been up all night traveling. You always come on with us, but you add so much. Brenden and I just really want to tell you how much we appreciate it, as we do you, Yancy. And Yancy, I'm going to make you a little bit jealous. You know why Rodney Orr from Tighter Insider isn't here? Guess what he got invited to over in Tuscaloosa this morning by Coach Kalen DeBoer. Got an open spring practice tomorrow. No, get this. In this day and age, got an open spring practice tomorrow at 8:30, which is this morning. So at 8:30,
that's his gift, huh?
He's going to rub that in next week. Hey, man.
No, but honestly, that's better than a golf round for him. Alabama's had that thing shut down now for, 15, 16 years since Saban got there. I feel so bad for them. I mean, I think maybe every now and then they get to see their players stretch their toes and then they got to leave. So,
yeah, it's kind of like,
that I'm sure Rodney's going to be really.
Yeah. Oh, we lost him. But Yancy will hopefully come back with us. I think something got hold of him, but it's kind of like the days of the old Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain, trying to get a pair of Levi's on the other side of East Berlin, trying to get a look at practice other than stretching the toes and, running some sprints and stuff. But Coach, thank you so much. Again,
Right,
let's go a couple of weeks. I want to, because we're going to, after the portal's over, we're going to get rankings of all these portal classes.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But you have made us all love basketball and all of our guests we have on here. And what a special thing. Congrats to the Florida Gators. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We're the most blessed people in the world. Coach, Mother Teresa famously said one time, we can't all do everything, but we can all do something great every single day. For executive producer Brenden Martin, thank you so much. Tonight,
Appreciate you.
Martin Show. You bet.
All right.